we're going to speak about the huge concerns over the rise of anti-Semitism towards Jewish students. It's evident in both the UK and the United States. Of course, this is since Israel responded to the Hamas atrocities of 7th of October by invading Gaza and to eliminate Hamas. Multiple Jewish students and academics at University College London told The Times that a culture of fear had taken hold as the war in Gaza unfolded, with students booed in lectures for challenging anti-Israel views. There have been similar issues in America, with anti-Israel protests sweeping universities. So here to discuss this, we're very happy to be joined by the Jewish activist and Emmy Award-winning actor, Yuval David. Yuval, thank you very much for your company. Yuval, thank you for having me on to turn your Saturday 5 into a Saturday 6. Indeed, indeed, indeed. I mean, Yuval, how bad do you think it's got? Because forgive me if I've been slightly too matter of fact, but I think there has always been a strain of anti-Semitism that has ran through the activist left. Am I wrong on that?
Sadly, you're not wrong. I have for so long in my adult life as an activist, as an advocate, I've been within the liberal, left, progressive LGBTQ communities. I've raised this red flag warning people, saying that there's this ever increasing rise in anti-Semitism. And now anti-Semitism isn't rising, it's already risen. We are walking within a cesspool of hatred.
Mm. I mean, Benjamin, you're part of the LGBTQ plus alphabet, and I mean, you are self-described, I think, at least Zionist. How concerned are you about the rise? Do you actually think it's always existed? Do you identify that actually it's got a hell of a lot worse since October 7th?
Well, first of all, Darren, that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. You know, what has really scared me is seeing the way that it's taken hold on university campuses. And I think Nancy Pelosi, the high-profile US politician, ally of Joe Biden, she said that a lot of these students have good cause for what they're doing, but she wishes that they would condemn Hamas in the same way that they do. Now, I suppose the question I would put to you, Yuval, is, you know, do you think that terrorism is being normalised by the back door during these protests? Is that what's going on?
Terrorism is not only being normalized by the back door, it's the front door. It's everywhere. We're seeing people chant. As I was on the George Washington University campus yesterday, when students and different Jewish organizations asked me to come and help them. So I arrived on campus, and the first chants I heard were "Death to America, death to Israel, and death to Zionists." The vast majority of Jewish people are Zionists, and I had to redefine Zionism to these people. Zionism is the movement about the self-actualization of the Jewish people, making sure that Jews have social and political representation with a connection to our indigenous history and our homeland. That's it. It doesn't negate anybody else's history. It doesn't negate anybody else's rights. It just ensures that we have our own rights. So when people are saying death to Zionists, they're actually saying death to Jews. We are seeing this across more than 200 campuses across the United States.
I mean, do you feel thoroughly let down, Yuval, by the political class? Do you think actually enough is being done to combat, to challenge this?
Well, short answer, yes, to your first question. Short answer, no, to your next question. I feel politically homeless. I feel that I don't quite belong within the same parties and movements that I flourished in. I feel this discomfort within my own LGBTQIA+ movement that has added letters, that is focused on inclusion, on acceptance, on tolerance, on self-expression, on exploring the full extent of human existence. Yet now we're seeing these factions that are not including Jewish people. They're saying, well, we believe in all these rights, but not when it comes to Jews, not when it comes to Israel. Let me tell you something else. I've helped rescue LGBTQ people and women internationally from dangerous and life-threatening situations in collaboration with numerous governmental and non-governmental organizations. I know which countries respect and support LGBTQ rights and the ones that don't. In Israel, the way I leave a building is by taking the stairs or an elevator. But in Gaza or in the Palestinian territories, the way a gay, queer person like me would leave a building is by being thrown off of it. So I fight for the values that I believe in, and definitely against terrorism. We are seeing mind twisting happening from these people who are so misinformed and misguided that they believe that it is acceptable to support terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah.
Yuval, good evening. What do you make of comments from, say, the UN and Joe Biden, for example, saying that, and even the UK in actual fact, that Israel, in its conflicts with Hamas and its ambition to rid Gaza of Hamas completely, that at some points the bombing has been indiscriminate?
We are in an election cycle. They're trying to make sure that this vocal group of people are still going to vote for the Democratic Party. So they're trying to give these, little bits of information or little statements that might still bring them to vote for the Democratic Party. The truth is that Biden has vocally supported Israel and even said that he's a Zionist for the vast majority of his political career. I'm not a person who's going to tell people who to vote for when it probably is going to be between Trump and Biden. I'm not going to say who to vote for, but I will say that there are problems for people like me within both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. So our politicians are trying to figure out what to do as they see this mass chaos happening, not just on our college campuses, but in every major city where Jewish Americans feel unsafe. I walk around with all of these Jewish stars and medallions around my neck to be demonstratively Jewish, because I'm a grandchild of Holocaust survivors. I refuse to be a Jew trembling in the shadows, worried about what other people say or think about me. I refuse to let other people take over the narrative of my identity. And we need more Jews and more allies to not just support, but to stand up, to speak out, to take action.
Yuval, sorry to interject. If you could press a button and flick a switch, what's your ideal solution to what's going on now in Gaza and Israel?
The solution is to eradicate Hamas. I am completely against terrorism.
But for the future of the Palestinian people,
tormented. Say that again?
For the future of the Palestinian people, where do you see the future between Israelis and Palestine?
Where do I see the future is hard to say. My hopes for the future is that Saudi Arabia will come in, or that maybe a UAE type of format can happen within the Palestinian territories, because it's still a tribal system. There are many areas within the Palestinian territories where they don't get along. They don't like each other. So how can we expect to have a two-state solution? How can the Palestinians have one state? I think it's probably going to need to be a three-state solution. It's definitely a very challenging situation, but until democracy and a democratic government does not control their own people, they're going to be controlled by terrorist groups. And that's a very dangerous situation for Palestinians themselves that do not have the ability to self-actualize because they're being tormented by organizations like Hamas.
Now, Yuval, what you talk about going on the campuses in the US is very concerning, and we've got students saying all sorts of horrendous anti-Semitic chants. But do you think that most of these students saying these horrendous things have a genuine hatred against the Jews? Or are a lot of them just ignorant fools who don't understand what they're saying going along to these protests because they're cool? And I say that in light of that video, which I'm sure you'll have seen from NYU, with these students being asked, why are you here? And they say, oh, we don't know, we're just from Colombia. We don't actually know why we're protesting. Do you know? She says to her mate, and the mate says, no, I've got no idea. So do you think they're just ignorant, or are they genuinely all anti-Semitic?
I think that the vast majority of them are ignorant, that are, well, here's a statistic for you that is quite disturbing. 97% of people under the age of 45 in North America, the United States and Canada, receive their news from TikTok and Instagram. The way the algorithm works is the fact that hashtag Free Palestine is a very popular hashtag. People are going to get that information. I wish all of you were much stronger, and I know some of you are very strong on social media, but we all need to keep posting and sharing and asking the people who not just follow us, but truly support and agree with us to keep sharing information so we can shift the algorithms. So these students Yeah, most of them are misguided, useful idiots who've been manipulated by terror groups and Islamist organizations. But when students feel that it's right to chant out "gas the Jews" like they've been doing this week, when they believe that it's acceptable for them to yell in my face, "Go back to Poland," that's anti-Semitism, and I don't think that there's any argument there.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, the fact that we have people on the streets coming out in support of the Houthis or indeed the Iranian state, you know, that just smacks of it's insanity, right? It's asking, chickens voting for KFC springs to mind.
Well, how could anybody who supports women's rights and LGBTQ rights and equal access to education and freedom of religion support terror groups? It is so hard to understand. So we say either they're idiots, they're useful idiots, they're misinformed, they're misguided, they're manipulated, or they just truly hate the West. We are hearing people saying, "Down with the West, burn it down." I don't know what these people want. What do they want instead of what they have?
Nothing good. That's what I would say to that. But Yuval, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Yuval.
That's the Jewish activist. And thank you. Emmy Award-winning actor there, Yuval David. Thank you very much. Now, folks, I want to play this clip of Jacob Rees-Mogg from yesterday. Now, Benjamin, I'm sure we're as one on this, that's an unacceptable way to treat anybody, never mind an elected representative of the people who was there to debate at a university. And do you worry that universities are not breeding grounds for speech and debate and reaching conclusions on ideas and actually now of hatred and censorship?
Yeah, I mean, you know, for radio listeners, that was Jacob Rees-Mogg being aggressively harangued by a group of students at Cardiff University. And it's, you know, politicians of all different stripes have come out and condemned this because, you know, in the light of the two MPs that have been murdered, you can't imagine how nerve-wracking that is. You know, I think what's going on is completely deplorable. It is way beyond the normal, healthy levels of discomfort and debate that universities exist to harbour. This is abuse, and this is verging into a pretty obvious racism. You know, sometimes people call me the wokest man in Britain, right? And so let me say to those other people who are self-identifying as woke or whatever, endorsing a group that throws gay people off roofs, that puts women in slavery and murders them, that believes in bringing back the slave trade as the Houthis have in Yemen, is not progressive. It is insane that they have got themselves into this contortion where they say they're so outraged by the idea of genocide that they effectively endorse Hamas, an organisation with the genocide of the Jewish people in its charter, just as Hezbollah does and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And I think we are incredibly lost when what is essentially a TikTok trend is gripping our campuses. And what worries me is that so many people that run these universities seem nervous because of the scale of outrage.
Well, indeed. But, I mean, Ben Leo, do you have sympathy for that? Because you've been sceptical and critical of the state of Israel.
I've not been sceptical of Israel. I merely raised the point and echoed the point that Joe Biden and the UN and other countries had raised, which is that maybe they should be a bit more careful with the direction of their bombs. If you listen to, yes, they are from Hamas, the figures from Hamas, apparently 30,000 civilians have died, 70% of which are children and kids. That was the only point I raised. I didn't comment on anything else. And actually, the argument gets so tribal where you raise an innocent point like that and I get called a Hamas supporter. I'm absolutely not, of course. But you know, I'm not sceptical of Israel, no. I mean,
can I just say one thing about those numbers? And it's awful, the number that's dead. There's no, you know, it's terrible because lots of innocent people are clearly being killed, and that's not ideal. But the difference is that If Hamas had the ability, it would kill every Jew in Israel, but it can't.
I don't dispute
Meanwhile, Israel has the ability to wipe out everyone in Gaza if it wanted, but it doesn't. It tries its best to just kill the terrorist. And I think that is a distinction that's completely lost. You've got one party with power that's trying its best to solve the problem, and another that looks like a victim, but it's not a victim. It just doesn't have the ability to wipe out the Jews as it desperately wants
Hey,
to.
listen, sorry, let me just answer you. I agree with you. 100% I agree with you, and I support Israel. However, you can't be so tribal where there's not any critical thinking or nuance allowed, where you're allowed to raise a point or a slight bit of concern about the number of kids dying without being called a Hamas supporter, which is completely insane. And actually, it does your argument, people who behave like that, a massive disservice.
Well, what's terrifying is just the idea that people think that the truths in all of the debates and all of the conflicts that take place is through the prism of Twitter or X or through TikTok, as Yuval was saying, you know, and to your point, Chloe, earlier on, people turn up to these protests not really knowing what they're about. There is so much division and hate and mistruth and fake news out there that sparks and continues to spiral these debates and these divisions, which is totally out of control. And I think that is a very, very dangerous place if we start believing everything and fake news that we do see on social media platforms and things that aren't reported accurately.
What amazes me is just how passionate people can get about an opinion that they've barely researched at all. I can understand, you know, we can't be experts on everything and saying, oh, yeah, I probably agree with that when it's something you haven't really researched. But to spend all your time and energy going out on the street, shouting and chanting, holding these placards. I mean, we've seen that video of Konstantin Kisin asking someone, what does intifada mean on the signs? Says, oh, I don't know, someone else gave me this
Yeah, someone
sign.
gave me this.
How can you be so passionate about something that you haven't even researched? Why don't you take all that time and energy you spend chanting and maybe just do a bit of basic Googling and learn a bit about
it goes back to the wider debate on universities. I would never, unless they wanted to be doctors or maybe architects, I would never advise my kids to go to university. I think it's a massive detriment. And in actual fact, I think employers these days would value 5 years of proper life experience and work experience than going to a university to get brainwashed by a bunch of
factory farms of indoctrination. But anyway,